We prime coat for two reasons. One is either to cover up a previous surface, and we need to get everything down to a basic white so that when we paint, we have a clean palette to work from. The other reason we paint a primer is because we have a raw material, and the raw material needs to get covered up and treated so that the paint will adhere to it, so that the raw material texture or color won't bleed through. If we're painting Luan flats that we've just built, we'll want to prime them with a primer and seal in the lumber before we paint. Otherwise, some of that lumber texture will bleed through on the first few coats, and it'll take longer for us to cover it up. And if we're not painting wood, we don't want to see the wood grain. We want that sealed in and covered up with a primer. This looks like the bad side of the wood, the back side. So we don't want to paint that. If we paint that side, if that's on the outside, this back side is going to delaminate. It's going to bubble and ripple and do all kinds of things. This is the front side of the Luan. That's the side that wants to be on the outside of the flat. That's the side we want to be painting. Hopefully the carpenters have built it the right way so that this is on the outside. Sometimes you can't tell the difference. This one is a little bit different. It's got some defects on this side that are actually pretty smooth, one here and one here, but I think it is fine, and it'll be the front. This is our raw material for our brick, and if we were painting the brick for the first time, you can see this is a recycled cardboard material, and it will want to get primed and sealed in with a primer before we paint it as well. We also have to regularly paint Masonite, and Masonite is usually used for our stage floors in our theaters. We replace the Masonite periodically, and we use it as a top layer on platforming on sets. It adds a little bit of soundproofing because it's a very dense material, so it does deaden some of the echoes of the platform, but there are additional soundproofing procedures you can do to make it better than that. But the Masonite is better than the raw platforms. It takes some of the creaking away and takes some of the echoes of footsteps away. But it's also a compressed, heat-treated, glued together fibrous material. And as such, it's very slick, and paint is not going to want to stick to it. So we want to prime that first thing as well. After I've done my primer coat, I'd be priming either because it was raw material or because I'm trying to cover up this previous paint job and trying to start out with a neutral surface. Then the base coat is your first layer of color that is heading you in the direction of where you want to go. This is going to be brickwork, so my first layer of color needs to be a warm, a brown, or a brick red, or something like that. Probably some junk paint. I can probably find some junk paint that is within the range of colors that will be brick. After that is base coated with my warm brick, brown, whatever color I use. Then I can get to painting. Sizing refers to when we take a soft flat like this muslin and we are going to stretch it. We're going to use a simple glue and water mixture because that's easily and readily available. It's non-toxic. Sizing is going to stretch out the fabric, and it's going to fill in all the pores of the fabric. If we don't fill in the pores of the fabric with our glue mixture or with our sizing mixture, that first layer of paint is going to act as the sizing, and it's going to bleed everywhere into the fabric, and we're not going to have control over it. We need to stretch it out. It's like sealing in a canvas. It is a canvas, it's just a large canvas, and it's lightweight. It's not meant to be something that lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years. It needs to be sealed in, and the sizing material seals in and fills in all the little pores and gaps between the fabric. And that allows paint to go on smoothly. I'm going to be repainting this brickwork to actually look like brickwork as opposed to graffitied brickwork. There is some semblance of brick poking through here and there. But because it's been spray painted, if I just try to go straight in and do my brick painting technique, this spray paint is probably going to bleed through the first several layers and it's going to still be visible. So if I want that to go away, I need to put in a primer coat of some sort of coverall type of thing and try to cover it up. But ideally something that has a property where it doesn't allow things to bleed through. We tend not to do spray paint, as in cans of spray paint, on scenery that we're going to reuse in theater because of that factor. The spray paint will continue to bleed through. It not only will bleed through because of its different textures, but sometimes spray paint is put on pretty heavily and it'll have an actual ridge that you can see, and that ridge will continue to bleed through even though it's completely covered up in paint. I tend to think of spray painting a flat as kind of using it the last time. When we get to the point where we need to spray paint something, it's a done deal. It gets spray painted, it's thrown away after that show. You can do spray paint effects without getting the aerosol spray cans, and you can do that with the pneumatic sprayers. You can do that with an HVLP gun or a standard pneumatic spray gun. It just is going to take more time because you're going to be mixing up all these different colors, and you're going to be adjusting your gun and adjusting your nozzles and that sort of thing. But at least you'll be using latex paint. You won't be using the aerosol spray paint and its enamel and other oil additives. There are other options to spray paint, and it's less toxic to your lungs. So if you use an HVLP spray gun, it puts a whole lot of less particulates in the air, as opposed to using the aerosol spray can on the set. That puts a whole bunch of particulates in the air, not only for the person doing the spraying, but for everyone in the room, and sometimes it gets sucked into the ventilation system and it goes into other rooms in the building. And pretty soon you're toxically gassing out the entire building. So that's why we do our spray painting outdoors. 90% of the time we can do our spray painting outdoors. If we plan it correctly, we do it outside where it's not getting sucked into the air handler system and being redistributed to other people. This is the only primer and sealer that I've got in the back. Not every white is a primer. If you're trying to cover up something like this, you need to get a paint that's going to actually do the right kind of cover up and not let these things bleed through. The Z-Prime should do. Let's see what happens. This is why I don't like spray paint. Yeah, it looks like it's going to seal it in just fine. Okay, this is good. But it's going to add an extra step. We have two blacks that we use regularly in our theater. This is our flat black paint. We use this to paint any scenic black that we want. if we need black with our white or with our other colors to mix a special color, we use this lamp black from the Spectrum brand. There are several others from Roscoe and other brands and Mann Brothers as well, but this is the one that's local and fairly inexpensive and does a great job. I'm also going to use this as a primer on the Masonite, and that way the Masonite gets set with the flat black and gets sealed in with the flat black before I paint the stage floor black. The stage floor black uses the Mann Brothers Veriflor black paint. This is a semi-gloss paint, and 2 coats of this on a brand new piece of Masonite will last multiple years. It's a good, durable, long-term care. It mops real easily. It cleans up easily. You don't want to use the flat black on your stage floor. It does not clean easy. It picks up dirt. You see the dirt all over the place. You can mop it, but then you walk on it and you see footprints. The Veriflor black is a really good, durable stage floor paint and will last many years if treated well. So 1 coat of flat black and 2 coats of Veriflor Scenic stage floor black paint. We don't water down our primers ever. You don't want to water down your primer. If you water down your primer, you are going to basically disable some of the adhesive and cover up functions of it, and it may not do a proper priming job. This has been sitting here for a long time, months, several months, so it has not been shaken in a long time. Got to dig into all those corners and get all that paint mixed up. Don't let that paint sit in the cracks of the paint can. Also try not to leave your paint can open. This isn't going to take very long, but that's good standard practice. The first time you are loading up your roller, it's going to soak up a lot of paint into the roller, and it's not going to go on as much. So the first one, we're not going to get a lot of coverage. But just roll it on, nice even coat. This goes on pretty quickly with the roller. And your standard roller technique is, when it is all out of the roller, don't work real hard at squeezing more paint out. That's just overworking the roller, and it's not getting a good coverage on there. It looks like it might be covering, but it's not covering very well, and it's going to spatter paint at me and on my feet and on my face if I'm painting a wall or a ceiling. So when it starts to get a little bit thin, just go back and reload up the roller. If you're painting something like a stage floor, you might want to be conscious of your linear strokes and not leaving little ridges. This looks rather glossy because it's still wet, but when it dries, it will be flat black, and it will act as a fabulous primer. I've had more success with flat black as a primer on my stage floor than I have with white. Even though this is not necessarily a primer paint, it takes those slick Masonite layers and saturates them with paint and water. If you need to have some extra insurance with your fresh Masonite, you can take a wet mop and mop it first, and that will start to raise the grain on the Masonite and allow your paint to penetrate the glossy surface more effectively. I did not do that here, but that is an alternative as well. Imperfections like this strand of fabric, get it out of there. We want to have a nice, clean, smooth stage floor. And that's basically it. Smooth off any ridges that might need it. You might ask, what nap roller did I use? And I used a medium nap roller. This is a smooth surface, and with smooth surfaces, the rollers often say that you want a very short nap roller for smooth surfaces, and then the more rough the surfaces go, the thicker the nap you need to get into all the cracks and crevices. That's the theory behind that. But I find a really, really thin nap roller, the thinnest 1/4 inch or shortest nap available, I don't find it's very successful. They don't hold a lot of paint. I'd rather have a medium nap roller and have it hold more paint, and I feel like I get better coverage and I get more successful coverage. So we let that dry, and in a couple hours we could paint our first coat of stage floor black on it. When I did this demonstration the other day, I went straight on to my freshly done Dutchman. My Dutchman glue was the size coat. I didn't do a prime coat and I didn't do a base coat. And as such, the previous colors on this flat, this orange, this brown, the pink that's in there, is causing this to stand out. And the fabric here not being primed and layered with a base coat is going to give it more visibility than what I originally intended to do. So before I go on with that technique, I'm going to paint a section of this with a primer coat and get our entire flat going from the same surface and see what happens from there. The colors were also translucent, especially this yellow, but the translucency is only pointing out the fact that I didn't prime my Dutchman, I didn't base coat, I didn't prepare it for my scenic work. We're just going to quickly throw this together and base coat it. I'm going to skip the prime coat and go straight to the base coat just to save some time, but a prime coat to seal it would be ideal. I have this really big napped roller because I'm going to be doing brick next. I want to see how much of the brick I can do. But we should see this start to disappear. And there are some little divots here that may have broken apart when I dragged it over here, or it may just have been the big gap. and they could use a little bit of extra touch-up. Got some gunk in my paint. This is a really heavy nap roller, probably not the one I wanted for this task, but I don't want to clean two rollers. It's also spattering on my arm a whole lot. When you're using a roller, you want to just get the paint that's in the roller to come out. You don't want to continue squeezing and squeezing and squeezing paint out. When it's empty, fill it up, go back for more paint. If you continue squeezing it out, it's just going to spatter all over you, all over the floor, everywhere. Base coated. I think this brick is dry enough that we can put on a base coat with this loaded roller. You can see it's doing two colors here, already creating. It's going to take a while for this roller to transition over into the brown. Smooth all this off. We did it really wet, and it's just paint everywhere. It looks like the second coat is going to seal up that spray paint, so that's good. Alright, I should have just done this with a brush. The roller didn't do anything other than spread a lot of wet paint everywhere. I don't even need to dip my brush in to Get paint in the grout lines. Not grout lines. Mortar. Grout is for tile. Brickwork and stonework has mortar in between. Base coat. There are several common ways to size your scenic flats. Gelatin glue formulas are the traditional method, but gelatin glue is not readily available. You will need to make it yourself. Heating the gelatin glue will generate odors, stinking up the shop. If you want to avoid the animal byproduct element, choose one of the alternatives. A laundry starch method is the preferred process, especially if you need your fabric to be translucent. Formulas and procedures are widely available at theatrical supply stores. Many shops use leftover paint, but this option will not seal the pores of the fabric as well as the other options. It will take multiple coats of paint before the paint stops soaking into the pores of the fabric. The most readily available option is to mix a solution of white glue and water, 50% glue and 50% water. This will stiffen your fabric similarly to gesso for the painter's canvas and seal the pores. Since white glue and water is translucent, add a splash of leftover paint so you can keep track of your coverage. So I'm going to pour some glue in here. That's probably pretty good. Like with the Dutchman, if we just put it on straight on, it's going to go on clear, and we're going to have a hard time knowing where we are, where we've been, where we're going. So we're going to also add some paint to it. I'm gonna pour all that in there. It's more than we need. But it'll be a good consistency for sizing. When you want to paint this on, you're going to see that it stretches out the fabric. You want to make sure that you get the sizing in all of the cracks and crevices of the fabric, which means you've got to go crisscrossing and go all possible directions. See, it's already starting to stretch out. That's it. That's our freshly sized flat. We'll let it sit overnight again to dry, or to be dry in a couple of hours, but we're done with it for today.